There are no private thoughts. That is from today's reading, and we will talk about that here in a moment. We're on to workbook lesson 19 of A Course in Miracles, and this lesson is, I am not alone in experiencing the effects of my thoughts. I am not alone in experiencing the effects of my thoughts. The idea for today is obviously the reason why your seeing does not affect you alone. You will notice that at times the ideas related to thinking precede those relating to perceiving, while at other times the order is reversed. The reason is that the order does not matter. Thinking and its results are really simultaneous, for cause and effect are never separate. Today we are again emphasizing the fact that minds are joined. This is rarely a wholly welcome idea at first, since it seems to carry with it an enormous sense of responsibility and may even be regarded as an, quote, invasion of privacy. Yet it is a fact that there are no private thoughts. Despite your initial resistance to this idea, you will yet understand that it must be true if salvation is possible at all. And salvation must be possible because it is the will of God. The minute or so of mind searching, which today's exercises require, is to be undertaken with eyes closed. The idea for today is to be repeated first, and then the mind should be carefully searched for the thoughts it contains at that time. As you consider each one, name it in terms of the central person or theme it contains, and holding it in your mind as you do so, say, I am not alone in experiencing the effects of this thought about blank. The requirement of as much indiscriminateness as possible in selecting subjects for the practice period should be quite familiar to you by now and will no longer be repeated each day, although it will occasionally be included as a reminder. Do not forget, however, that random selection of subjects for all practice periods remains essential throughout. Lack of order in this connection will ultimately make the recognition of lack of order in miracles meaningful to you. Apart from the, quote, as needed, unquote, application of today's idea, at least 3 practice periods are required, shortening the length of time involved if necessary. Do not attempt more than 4. Okay, that is the lesson for today. I am not alone in experiencing the effects of my thoughts. What does that even mean? I am not alone in experiencing the effects of my thoughts. Well, let's read paragraph by paragraph, and we'll try to see if we can figure out what Jesus is getting at here. It's not that clear, actually. Sometimes we may fool ourselves in thinking that we fully understand what Jesus is really saying, and I think it may be the case that there's a deeper message and we're not really fully, I don't think I'm fully understanding this. But let's read it and we'll see if we can, collaboratively get at what he's getting at here. The idea for today is obviously the reason why your seeing does not affect you alone. You will notice that at times the ideas related to thinking precede those related to perceiving, while at other times the order is reversed. The reason is that the order does not matter. Thinking and its results are really simultaneous, for cause and effect are never separate. Now, what is he saying here? I think what he's getting at, there's several different things. This saying, seeing is believing, and then someone turned it around, maybe Dr. Wayne Dyer, whoever it was, they turned around the seeing is believing to believing is seeing. And so this is saying something similar, which is that what you perceive and what you think are basically, they happen simultaneously. So the world outside of you really conforms to your mindset. So your experience of life is conforming to your mindset at any given moment. So whoever you meet, you talk to, whatever issues are coming up, whatever arguments are coming up with people, emotional things are coming up, et cetera, whatever scenarios you might find yourself in life, they're really all conforming to the thoughts that are in your mind at any given time. And I think ultimately where this is going is your experience is going to change as you change your mind. Your experience of life will change. For example, if you're experiencing, trouble in your life, like, I don't know what it might be. Difficulty, distress, trouble, self-sabotage, self-destructive behavior, etc. As you do the forgiveness work and you go on this journey and you do the process, your experience of life will become more and more clean and clear. And you will notice that there will be less and less of those things showing up in your experience. And it's because you are doing this forgiveness work. And you're learning the lessons. You're not just making the same mistakes over and over again, but you are choosing again, as Jesus says at the end of the text, and you're choosing to align your vision more and more closely to the truth. Something like that, right? So seeing is believing, believing is seeing. As you open yourself to the idea that what Jesus is saying here is true, and you start to entertain the possibility that it is true, even if you just start to entertain the possibility, you don't have to fully believe it, but you're doing the course because you're open, then you will start to see that what this is saying is true. So believing, meaning being open to believing, at least, you will start to see. Remember in the Gospels, Jesus said, unless you see signs and wonders, you will not believe. In a way that's true for everything in life. Unless we see the results of something, we don't have belief in it. But when we start to see the results, when we start to see the fruits, by their fruits you shall know them, then you will start to have more faith in what it is. So people that do the course, just not to belabor this, but people that do A Course in Miracles, they keep doing it because they see that it's working for them. They see how it's helping them. And I am a poster child myself for that, I would say. Today we are again emphasizing the fact that minds are joined. This is rarely a wholly welcome idea at first, since it seems to carry with it an enormous sense of responsibility and may even be regarded as an, quote, invasion of privacy, unquote. Yet it is a fact that there are no private thoughts. Despite your initial resistance to this idea, you will yet understand that it must be true if salvation is possible at all. And salvation must be possible because it is the will of God. Now, Jesus is really not being clear here. And I don't know if anyone can really say what he means just by reading this one paragraph, but I'm going to try to explain what it means based on everything else that he's saying in the Course, to the best of my knowledge. But first, let me just say that I recently heard about a group, a Course in Miracles group. I'm not going to name any names. But in this group, which is somewhat like a cult, the leaders had the idea that anything that was going on with someone in the group, they had to share because there are no private thoughts. So you cannot have any private thoughts. If you have any private thoughts, you have to share your thoughts, like whatever's going on with you, with everyone else. It's like if you're at school and you have a pack of gum, the teacher says, well, you got to share your gum with everyone. Might not be the best analogy, but this is not what Jesus is saying here, though. I think what he's getting at is the idea that we all have the same mind. We all have the same egoic framework. We all share the same ego thought system that we have aligned with and we're conditioned to. Yet we also have the Holy Spirit and the Holy Spirit's voice in our heart. And that voice is calling us home to love. And so we all have this split mind in a sense, right? Some people talk about the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other shoulder. It's kind of like that in a way. You know, we have the ego, which Jesus says is the loudest voice, and basically is wrong-mindedness. The ego is trying to follow the ways of the world and lose your soul, whereas the Holy Spirit is follow the truth and remember that your soul cannot be lost. Your soul is eternal. Yourself is eternal. Now, we all share this same mind. We all have a deep, abiding interest in going home, back to love again. And we also have this part of our mind which is hell-bent on separation and on making our brother guilty and making our brother wrong. In that sense, there are no private thoughts. We're all dealing with the same shit. But it's all just taking different forms for all of us. The content is the same, but the forms are changing. So my life might look very different than your life. But if you get down to brass tacks, if you get down to the, to what's really going on, if you separate out all the surface, the way it looks on the surface, it basically comes down to the same thing. So in that sense, there are really no private thoughts. And there's only two things happening. And Jesus keeps saying this, there's only two things happening. There's love and there's fear. You're either choosing love or you're choosing fear in any given moment. And your brother is doing the same thing. And that's really all that's happening. When you start to see it this way, you will really see it this way, right? You will start to see that in any given moment, that's what we're all doing, is we're either choosing love or we're choosing fear. So Jesus is saying you will be initially resistant to this idea that there's no private thoughts. What? Of course I have private thoughts. I have my own thought. This sounds very cultish. Oh, you have no private thoughts. I know everything that you're thinking. You can run, but you cannot hide from the J-Man. That's not what this is saying. This is not in any way, should not be taken as a threat. This is more of a promise, right? This is the promise of your heart. That ultimately we are all in the same boat here. We are all cast and crew on the sonship, right? Cast and crew on the sonship, and we're all going home together or not at all. So in the next paragraph, the minute or so of mind searching which today's exercise requires to be undertaken with eyes closed. The idea for today is to be repeated first, and then the mind should be carefully searched for the thoughts it contains at that time. As you consider each one, name it in terms of the central person or theme it contains, and holding it in your mind as you do so, say, I am not alone in experiencing the effects of this thought about blank. Another way to say this is that if your thoughts about blank are bringing you joy and bringing you into a state of peace and bringing you, reminding you of the love which we all are, then the effects of that are going to have an effect on everyone else. too, around you. And if you are seeing outside of yourself, the effects of what you see outside of yourself are bringing you dis-ease and lack of peace, that will have an effect on everyone else as well. It's another way of putting this. In that sense, there are also no private thoughts. All of our thoughts have effects, and they have an effect both on our mind and everyone else's mind. The requirement of as much indiscriminateness as possible in selecting subjects for the practice period should be quite familiar to you by now. Jesus has been saying that since the very beginning of the lessons. Be indiscriminate in what you choose, and will no longer be repeated each day, although it will occasionally be included as a reminder. So Jesus is like, all right, I've said this enough. I'm not going to say it anymore. Be indiscriminate in when you search your mind. Don't play favorites in terms of your thoughts, which thought you choose for today's exercise. Do not forget, however, that random selection of subjects for all practice periods remains essential throughout. Lack of order in this connection will ultimately make the recognition of lack of order in miracles meaningful to you. Okay, the first miracle principle. There's no order of difficulty in miracles. Don't make one more or less important than another. They're all the same. Apart from the, quote, as needed, unquote, application of today's idea, at least 3 practice periods are required, shortening the length of time involved. If necessary, do not attempt more than 4. So Jesus is saying, if this is easy for you, then do 3. If it's not, make it shorter, do less. I don't want this to scare you. I don't want you to be too uncomfortable. But anyway, I think A Course in Miracles, you have to really, ultimately, you have to see the whole thing in context. And part of the problem with the workbook, especially if people only do the workbook, is that the workbook does not make sense out of context. So you have to really engage with the rest of the course. And that's the purpose of why I'm doing this channel. But there's no substitute really for doing the course on your own. Don't rely on anyone else. Do it on your own. Engage with it on your own. Look for your own inner guidance. And with that, we will say adios, mis amigos, and we're going to meet again for lesson 20 tomorrow. And I will be doing right now another video on continuation of the psychotherapy supplement for those who are interested. This is a supplement that Helen did after she scribed the course that came through Jesus as well. And it's a fascinating read, and we just began it yesterday, so stay tuned. Thank you.